she handed it to the wrong house, and the mafia boss, bare-chested, noticed her bruises. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving the air thick with mist and the scent of wet stone. It was the kind of night where danger hid behind every corner, and yet Arya walked steadily, clutching a small, tightly wrapped package to her chest. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of the task. The package was important. It could shift the balance of power in the city's underground, a secret she had promised to deliver without hesitation. And yet her mind replayed the warning she had ignored. Do not fail. Do not falter. Do not hand it to the wrong house. Her footsteps echoed softly as she reached the correct street, but a wrong turn had led her to an unfamiliar door. She hesitated. The house was large, imposing, made of dark stone and heavy iron. From inside came the low hum of voices, quiet but commanding, like the murmur of an ocean deep beneath the surface. She knew instinctively that she should leave, that this was not the place. But something, curiosity perhaps, or desperation, made her knock anyway. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped into the dim light. Arya froze. The man was tall, broad, and bare-chested, his skin pale but marked by scars that told stories of battles she could not imagine. He moved with the grace of someone who owned the shadows themselves, and his eyes, dark, piercing, fixed on her immediately. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low, smooth, and dangerous. Arya swallowed hard. I'm sorry," she stammered. But the man, instead of anger, noticed something else. The bruises along her arms and neck, faint but telling. She tried to hide them, but her trembling hands betrayed her. "Bruises," he murmured, almost to himself, but loud enough that she heard. "And you still came here." I had to deliver this," she whispered, holding out the package. Her hands shook so badly that the bundle wobbled. He studied her, his gaze intense, almost as if he could see the fear and the defiance tangled together inside her. Slowly he reached out, not to take the package, but to brush a loose strand of hair from her face. His fingers barely touched her skin, but the air seemed to thrum where they met. "You should not be here," he said finally, his voice low and commanding. "This is not your world." I made a mistake," she admitted. "I didn't mean to, I had to." Her voice broke, and she struggled to regain control. "Please, just tell me where I should go." The man tilted his head, studying her with something unreadable in his eyes. Then, almost silently, he stepped aside. "Come in," he said. Arya hesitated. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but the warmth from the house, the gravity of his presence, and the weight of her own fear rooted her to the spot. Slowly she stepped inside, feeling the chill of the outside world fade, replaced by a heat that seemed both comforting and dangerous. The interior was vast and dimly lit. Shadows moved across the walls, cast by flickering candles set in ornate holders. The furniture was heavy and carved, ancient yet elegant, and tapestries hung like dark waterfalls, depicting scenes of battles, feasts, and strange creatures. The air smelled of spice and smoke, and somewhere beneath it all there was a metallic tang, sharp and commanding. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a high-backed chair. His eyes did not leave her. Arya obeyed, her knees weak. "I noticed your bruises," he said quietly, walking around her slowly, deliberately. "Who did this to you?" Arya's heart pounded. She had never spoken of the violence she had endured, not to anyone, not even in whispers. And yet, here was a man who saw it anyway, who named it aloud without accusation or pity. "No one," she said at last, the word fragile. I fell." He chuckled softly, a sound that was both low and dangerous. "Do not lie to me," he said. "I can feel it. You carry more than bruises, you carry fear and defiance." Arya looked down, ashamed and exposed. She had never met someone who could read her so completely, who could see both her weakness and her courage at the same time. "My name is Dante," he said suddenly, as if reading her silence. "And you, little shadow, are far from safe here." I'm Arya," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to," she trailed off. unsure how to explain that she had simply followed instructions, that she had hoped to survive this night without anyone noticing her mistakes. Dante's gaze softened just slightly, though his eyes still burned with intensity. "You made a mistake," he said almost thoughtfully. "But mistakes have a way of revealing the truth, and the truth about you," he paused, letting the weight of the silence stretch between them, "is that you are stronger than you know." Arya's heart fluttered, a mix of fear and something else she could not name. He was dangerous, yes, terrifyingly so, but there was also a strange pull, like the tide calling to a lost ship. "You are bruised," he said again, pointing to her arms, "and yet you still walked into my house carrying this package. Why, I had no choice," she whispered. "I was told to deliver it. I cannot disobey." He nodded slowly, as if considering this. Then he leaned closer, his face a shadowy mask in the candlelight. "You understand power even if you do not wield it. That is rare." Arya looked up, meeting his gaze. She saw not just power but curiosity, something like interest. It made her shiver, though she was not sure if it was fear or something else. "Why did you not stop me?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "You could have," he raised a hand, cutting her off gently. "And yet I did not," he said. "Because there is a part of me that wants to see what you will do, whether you will survive or break." Her breath caught. There was a danger in his words, a tension that pulled at her chest. And yet, oddly, there was also a strange sense of safety, as if being here, despite every warning she had been given, meant she had not failed entirely. For a long moment they simply watched each other, the silence thick with unsaid truths and unspoken possibilities. The shadows in the room seemed to lean closer, as if listening. Finally, Dante spoke, his voice low and deliberate. "You have two choices, Arya. You can leave now and pretend this never happened. Walk back into the night, bruised but alive." Or, his eyes darkened, intense and unreadable. "You can stay and tell me why you are carrying this package, and perhaps I will decide whether you live or die." Arya's pulse raced. Stay and reveal her story, risk everything. Leave and never know if she could escape the night unscathed. Her hands clutched the package tighter. She began, but her words faltered. Dante's gaze softened just slightly, and yet it carried a weight that made her shiver. "Do not fear," he said. "Not yet, but be honest. The truth will save you or destroy you." The wind outside howled, rattling the windows as if the city itself was aware of the choice she had to make. Arya's lips trembled, but she nodded, slowly, finally speaking. "I will stay," she whispered. "I will tell you everything." Dante nodded, almost imperceptibly, as if a storm inside him had been stilled by her decision. But in the shadows behind him, a flicker of movement, something dark and watchful, reminded Arya that even here she was not safe. Not entirely. The night stretched before them, heavy with secrets, bruises, and unspoken truths. And as Arya began to speak, Dante listened, not just with his ears but with a gaze that could see into the very soul. Somewhere deep in the house, in the silence beyond the candlelight, shadows stirred. A warning, or perhaps a promise. Arya did not know. All she knew was that the night had changed. She had stepped into a world where every heartbeat mattered, every word carried weight, and every secret could shift the balance between life and death. And Dante, bare-chested and scarred, watched her with an intensity that promised both danger and protection. The night was far from over. The mansion was larger inside than it appeared from the street. Shadows lingered in corners, clinging to the edges of candlelight as if the house itself were alive. Arya followed Dante through a series of hallways, her footsteps light, almost hesitant. Every detail of the house seemed to hold a story: ancient tapestries, towering bookshelves filled with dust-covered tomes, and mirrors that reflected not just faces, but fleeting, strange shapes in the background. "You should not have come here," Dante said quietly, his voice echoing in the dim hallway. "But since you did, you must understand the rules of this house." Arya nodded, clutching the package tighter, though it no longer felt like her own. The weight of it seemed insignificant compared to the gravity of being in Dante's presence. First, Dante continued, you speak only when spoken to. Second, you do not touch what is not yours. Third, you do not lie, not to me, not to yourself. She listened, her chest tight. Rules were simple, yet the consequences were never explained. She sensed that breaking them would be more than punishment. It could be deadly. Yet, for some reason, she did not feel entirely afraid. There was a strange pull in the way Dante moved, in the way he observed her. They entered a room that smelled of spice and old wood. A fire burned in a stone hearth, its flames dancing across Dante's bare chest as he sat in a high-backed chair. He gestured for her to sit opposite him. Arya obeyed, her hands resting in her lap. The bruises on her arms throbbed in the warmth of the fire, reminders of the world she had come from, a world of pain she had thought she could escape. "Why do you carry this package?" Dante asked, his eyes locked on hers. "What makes it worth risking your life?" I cannot say," Arya whispered. "I promised someone I would deliver it. I cannot disobey." Her voice faltered, but there was a steadiness beneath it, a courage she barely recognized in herself. Dante leaned back, studying her. "You are honest in fear," he said softly. "That is rare. Most people lie even when their lives are at stake." For a moment, silence fell between them. Arya wanted to speak, to explain the bruises, the pain, the endless nights of hiding and surviving. But something in Dante's gaze made her pause. He did not pity her. He did not judge her, he only saw. "Your body tells stories," he said at last, his voice low. "Every mark, every bruise, it speaks louder than words." Arya's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken about her like that, as if her pain were both a shield and a truth. "I survived," she said quietly. "That is all." Dante's eyes softened slightly, but only slightly. "Survival is not enough," he said. "You must learn to wield strength, not just endure it. You have the potential, but potential is meaningless without control." "Control?" Arya echoed, unsure what he meant. "Power," Dante corrected, his gaze intense. "Even fear can be turned into power. Pain can be sharpened into skill. You have been broken, yes, but now you must learn to bend, not break, under the weight of the world." Arya nodded slowly, the firelight reflecting in her eyes. She had never imagined anyone speaking to her like this, acknowledging her suffering, yet challenging her to rise above it. Dante stood abruptly, his bare chest catching the glow of the fire. He moved toward a small cabinet, retrieving a pair of slender, polished wooden sticks. "You will train," he said. "Not for me, not for anyone, for yourself. If you survive here, you do so because you can defend yourself." Arya blinked, unsure how to respond. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of his presence. I don't know if I can," she admitted. "You think that," he said, "because you measure yourself against the world you came from. But this is not that world. Here, strength is measured differently. Every glance, every breath, every heartbeat can be a weapon or a weakness." Training began in silence. Dante's movements were precise, almost fluid, and he expected the same from Arya. She stumbled, fell, and grew frustrated, but he never scolded. He simply corrected her stance, adjusted her grip, and waited. "You resist too much," he said at one point, his hand brushing hers as he adjusted her fingers. "Relax. Let the motion flow through you. Do not fight it. Bend, do not break." The contact was brief, almost imperceptible, yet it sent a shiver through her. She looked up at him, and for the first time saw not just the dangerous man before her, but someone who had also carried scars, someone who had known pain and had learned to survive it. Days passed, or perhaps weeks, time blurred within the mansion's walls. Shadows grew long and familiar, and Arya found herself becoming part of the rhythm of the house. She learned to move silently, to read the subtle shifts in Dante's mood, and to anticipate danger in ways she never thought possible. Through it all, tension grew. Small moments lingered longer than they should. His hand near hers, the brush of his arm, the way his gaze held her for a heartbeat too long. Fear and attraction twisted together, making her pulse quicken in ways she did not understand. Yet despite the closeness, boundaries remained clear. Dante never crossed a line, but the closeness of their interactions created a storm neither of them could name. Every training session, every conversation, every shared silence was charged, as if the house itself held its breath in anticipation. One night, as the rain pattered against the windows, a sudden noise shattered the calm. A shadow moved outside the mansion, barely visible through the flickering light. Arya froze, her heart racing. "Stay behind me," Dante said, his voice low and steady, though a dangerous edge ran through it. He moved like a predator, every step calculated, every muscle coiled for action. Through the window, Arya saw a figure slip past the gate. Someone had entered the mansion, someone who should not have been here. Dante's eyes darkened. "They know you are here," he murmured. "And they are not coming for me." Arya's pulse raced. Fear twisted in her stomach, but she refused to retreat. She had survived so much already. She could survive this. The intruder moved through the hallways, silent and quick. Dante's hands were steady as he guided her to a hidden room behind a tapestry. "Stay here," he ordered softly. "Do not make a sound." Arya nodded, her hands pressed against the cold stone wall. She could hear the intruder moving, could sense the tension in the air like static before a storm. And then Dante's voice, low and commanding, echoed through the hallway. "Reveal yourself," he said. "I know you are there." The intruder hesitated. Then a shadow moved closer and a brief struggle erupted. Arya could hear the sounds of combat, wood striking wood, a low grunt, the subtle shift of movement. Her heart pounded. She wanted to help, wanted to step forward, but Dante's hand on her shoulder was firm and steady. "Watch," he whispered. "Learn." From her hiding place she saw him, Dante, bare-chested, moving with a fluid grace that was terrifying and beautiful. Every strike was precise, every motion deliberate. And yet, despite the danger, there was a strange poetry to it, a rhythm that seemed almost mythic. Finally, the intruder fell back, retreating into the shadows. Dante's gaze followed him, sharp and unyielding. Then he turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You saw," he said softly, "you saw what it means to survive in my world, and now you understand why you cannot leave yet. You are not ready, but you are learning." Arya swallowed hard, the adrenaline still rushing through her veins. She had never felt so alive, so aware of every heartbeat, every breath. Fear and fascination coiled together inside her. Dante stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. "You are stronger than you realize," he said. "And yet, there is more to you than strength. There is courage and defiance and something else, something I have not seen in a long time." Arya's breath caught. She did not know what he meant, but she felt it too, the strange pull, the tension, the unspoken bond that had begun to form between them. And then from somewhere deep within the mansion, a soft whisper echoed. Not a word, but a presence, a shadow moving in the darkness, watching, waiting. Arya realized with a shiver that their night was far from over. The house held secrets yet untold, dangers yet unseen, and a story yet to be written. Dante's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly, and he stepped back. "Rest," he said. "Tomorrow we continue. You are learning, but there is more to survive than strength alone." Arya nodded, her hands pressed to her lap, her mind racing. She was tired, bruised, and unsure of what the next day would bring. Yet deep inside, a spark had ignited, a fire she could not extinguish. She did not yet know how this night, this house, or this man would change her. But she knew one thing: the shadows were alive, and so was she. The fire flickered, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. And in the quiet of the mansion, Arya understood that survival was only the beginning. The city outside Dante's mansion was quiet, though its streets thrummed with hidden danger. Inside, Arya moved carefully, her hands still aching from the bruises of the past, yet her mind sharpened with every lesson Dante had taught her. Every shadow seemed to whisper secrets, and every creak of the floorboards made her senses alert. She had begun to understand the mansion's rhythm, the unspoken language of its darkness, and the way Dante's gaze always seemed to anticipate the unseen. Dante, bare-chested as always, stood by a large window overlooking the city. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, sharp and calculating. When he spoke, it was not to Arya but to the night itself. "They are moving," he said almost to himself, "and they will not wait for mercy." Arya approached cautiously. "Who is moving?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but the air between them carried tension, heavy and dangerous. "The ones who seek the package," Dante said, turning his eyes on her. "They will stop at nothing to claim it, and soon it will come to a choice, not just of survival, but of loyalty and trust." Arya nodded, feeling the weight of the words. She had sensed that the package was more than a simple delivery. It carried power, a secret so potent that it could shift the balance of the city's underworld. And now she realized they were moving toward a moment that could change everything. Dante handed her a dagger, sleek and dark, its edge catching the candlelight. "You must understand what you protect before you can defend it," he said. "This is not just steel, it is a symbol. And symbols have power." Arya took it, feeling its weight, the coldness of the metal against her palm. She nodded, understanding that her training was no longer about survival alone. It was about choice, control, and courage. Hours passed in careful preparation. Dante and Arya moved silently through the mansion, checking rooms, securing hidden doors, and reinforcing the defenses. Every action was precise, every step deliberate. In the quiet moments, Dante observed her, and Arya felt his gaze, heavy with something she could not name. "You are changing," he said finally, his voice low and calm. "Do you feel it?" I think so," she admitted. "I am stronger," but her voice faltered. "I am also afraid of what comes next." "That is the point," Dante said. "Fear is not weakness, it is a guide. Learn to follow it and it will lead you to power." They paused near a long hallway, shadows stretching across the floor like dark rivers. A soft noise made Arya freeze, a whisper of movement, barely perceptible. Dante's hand brushed hers, not touching but close enough to send a shiver down her spine. "Stay calm," he murmured, "and remember what I taught you. Control the fear or it will control you." The intruder appeared suddenly at the far end of the hallway, masked and swift. Arya's heart raced, but she did not flinch. Dante's movements were a fluid combination of strength and precision. He disarmed the intruder with careful strikes, yet he did not harm them unnecessarily. Arya watched, understanding the balance he maintained between danger and mercy, power and restraint. It was a lesson not just of combat but of character. After the intruder fled, Dante turned to her, his eyes intense. "You saw what it means to survive in my world," he said. "And you understood that power is more than strength. It is awareness, patience, and choice." Arya nodded, her hand still trembling slightly, but her resolve strengthened. She had learned not just to defend herself, but to see the world through Dante's eyes, the intricate web of danger, opportunity, and loyalty. Then Dante revealed the truth about the package. "It is not just a delivery," he said. "It contains a fragment of an ancient spell. One that can either free me from my curse or bind me to it forever, and in the wrong hands it could destroy everything." Arya's eyes widened. "A curse," she whispered. "You mean your power?" "Yes," Dante said. "It is not just control over people or territory. It is older, deeper, and darker than you can imagine. And now, because of you, it has come into play. You were never meant to find me, but fate has led you here." Her mind reeled. She had entered the mansion by accident, yet every moment since had led her closer to a truth she could hardly grasp. She was no longer an intruder. She was part of a story much larger than herself, a story of power, curses, and choices that could shape the city. Dante studied her closely. "You have courage, yes, but you also have something else, something rare, compassion. Even in the midst of fear, you do not harden yourself completely. That is why you are here, why you are needed. Arya swallowed, feeling a mixture of pride and fear. She was needed, but needed in a world of shadows and danger, where mistakes could cost more than life itself. As they prepared for the coming night, Dante led her to a hidden chamber in the mansion. There, the walls were lined with mirrors, reflecting the flickering candlelight. The air was thick with magic, subtle and powerful. Here, Dante said, you will see what the spell holds, but understand this. Knowledge is power, yes, but it is also danger. What you learn here will change you, perhaps even more than survival has. Arya stepped forward, her reflection multiplying across the mirrors. She saw herself, bruised but determined, small yet resilient. And beside her, reflected in the same glass, was Dante, powerful, dangerous, and strangely human. He extended a hand, not for her to take, but to gesture. Look closely. Do not be afraid. This is your choice as much as mine. You can step back or you can step forward into what comes next. Arya felt her heart race. She could step back, walk away from the mansion, the package, the danger, and return to the shadows of her old life. Or she could step forward, accept the responsibility, and face the power and curse that had drawn her here. She began, but hesitated. You do not have to speak, Dante said. Action speaks louder than words. The mirrors shimmered, revealing glimpses of possible futures. In one, she saw herself alone, bruised and afraid, walking away from the mansion. In another, she saw herself standing beside Dante, facing dangers together, learning to bend, not break. And in a third, more distant vision, they stood together stronger, their bond forged through fire and shadow. Arya's breath caught. The choices were clear, yet the risk was immense. Every instinct warned her to retreat, yet another voice, deeper and surer, urged her to step forward. And then the sound came, a soft whisper from the shadows beyond the mirrors. Not a voice, but a presence. Something familiar yet unknown, moving closer with intent. Dante's eyes darkened. They have taken the package, he said quietly. Someone we trusted has betrayed us. Arya's heart sank. She had felt the tension in the air, the subtle shift in the shadows, but she had not imagined betrayal so close. The thought of the package falling into the wrong hands was terrifying, not just for Dante, but for the city, and for her own fragile sense of survival. They will come, Dante continued, his voice low and controlled. And we must be ready, but more than that, you must trust yourself, trust what you have learned, trust that courage is stronger than fear. Arya nodded, feeling a new strength rising within her. The fear was still there, a shadow at the edges of her heart, but it no longer controlled her. She could act, she could fight, she could survive, and perhaps she could protect more than herself. Dante stepped closer, his gaze locking onto hers. This is the moment, he said. The moment where choice becomes action, where courage is tested and trust is forged. Are you ready, Arya? She met his gaze, steady now, the shadows of her past replaced with the light of determination. I am ready, she said. The mirrors shimmered again, reflecting not just their images, but the city beyond, the dangers that awaited, and the bond that had begun to form between them. And in the quiet of the mansion, shadows moving like silent witnesses, Arya understood that the night was far from over. The true test had just begun. Outside, the wind whispered, carrying a promise of danger and revelation. And inside, Dante and Arya prepared to face it together, knowing that survival alone was no longer enough. They needed courage, cunning, and trust, and perhaps in the unlikeliest of places, even the beginnings of something deeper. The night stretched before them, dark, dangerous, and full of possibility. And for the first time, Arya felt the thrill of stepping fully into her own story. The mansion was silent, but the air thrummed with tension. Every shadow seemed to pulse with a life of its own, moving like unseen currents across the walls. Arya stood at the center of the room, the package clutched tightly in her hands. She could feel its weight, not just of paper and cloth, but of power and consequence. Dante's eyes were fixed on the far door, his posture tense, bare chest gleaming in the firelight. "They are coming," he said, voice low and steady, though it carried the edge of danger. "We must be ready. Trust in what you have learned, trust in yourself, and trust in me." Arya nodded. Fear was there, yes, but it no longer dominated her. She could feel the courage that had been slowly growing in her, the strength she had forged through bruises, mistakes, and survival. This night would test everything she had become. A soft, sinister whisper echoed through the halls. The shadows shifted, revealing a figure she had once trusted, someone who had led them here. The intruder's eyes gleamed with ambition and malice. In their hands, the package trembled slightly, as if aware of the wrong hands holding it. Dante's gaze hardened. "You have chosen poorly," he said, his voice low, a dangerous promise. "But there is still time to correct it." Arya stepped forward, the dagger in her hand steady. "We can stop them," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Together." Dante's eyes softened for just a moment, the barest hint of approval. "Yes," he said, "together, but remember, this is more than skill. This is courage, heart, and choice. Every moment matters." The intruder lunged and the fight began. Shadows clashed, footsteps echoed, and the air was thick with tension. Dante moved with fluid precision, deflecting attacks, guiding Arya without words, teaching her the rhythm of danger. She moved with a grace she had never known, her every strike precise, her fear transformed into clarity. "You are ready," Dante said, his voice barely audible over the clash of movement. "Do not hesitate. Act with purpose." Arya struck, disarming the intruder and reclaiming the package. But the danger was far from over. The spell inside pulsed, glowing faintly as if aware of her courage. She could feel the energy brushing against her hands, the power trembling, waiting for a choice to be made. Dante's eyes met hers. "Now," he said, "do not think, do not doubt, let your heart guide you. The package, the spell, it is your choice to wield it or to let it go." Arya took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down, the echoes of past mistakes whispering doubts in her mind. And yet she could also feel something else, trust in Dante, trust in herself, and the quiet, growing bond between them that had been forged through fear, training, and survival. When she opened her eyes, she made her choice. With a steady hand, she activated the package's spell, not to harm, not to dominate, but to protect. A soft, radiant light spread through the room, pushing back the shadows and revealing the truth of the intruder. The magic was not destructive. It revealed intentions, exposing the betrayal and offering a chance for redemption to those willing to accept it. The intruder froze, caught between fear and revelation. Dante moved forward, placing a hand on Arya's shoulder, steadying her as the energy faded. "You chose wisely," he said softly. "Courage tempered with heart, that is true power." Arya felt a surge of relief and triumph. She had survived the night, reclaimed the package, and made the right choice when it mattered most. Yet even in victory, there was a tension that lingered. The spell's energy had shifted something in the mansion, something ancient and powerful, as if the walls themselves had been awakened. Dante led her to the center of the room, the firelight casting dancing shadows across their faces. "You see now," he said, "that survival alone is never enough. You must make choices, face truths, and trust in the strength within you. That is how you transform fear into power and pain into courage." Arya nodded, feeling a sense of completion and awakening. The journey that had begun with a simple mistake, the wrong house, the wrong delivery, had become a path of discovery, strength, and transformation. She realized that she had changed, and so had Dante. They were no longer teacher and pupil, nor intruder and protector. They were allies, partners forged in darkness and tempered by trust. The mansion grew quiet, the shadows retreating to the corners, leaving only the warmth of the fire and the faint hum of lingering magic. Dante's gaze softened, the first true warmth she had seen in his eyes. "You have faced fear," he said. "You have faced choice. And you have chosen wisely. There is something rare in that, something worth holding onto. Arya looked at him, feeling the weight of his words settle over her. She had seen his strength, his scars, and his guarded heart. And now she realized he had also seen hers, her courage, her defiance, and the unspoken longing she had tried to hide. The bond between them, formed in shadows and danger, had grown into something neither of them could deny. A quiet understanding passed between them, unspoken yet undeniable. They were connected, not by obligation or fear, but by choice and trust. Outside, the city slept under the watchful gaze of the moon, unaware of the battle that had taken place and the choices that had shaped the night. Inside, the mansion was calm, but the energy of the spell lingered, a reminder of the power that had been harnessed and the dangers that still waited beyond the walls. Dante stepped closer, his hand brushing hers lightly, a subtle gesture of connection. "You have changed," he said softly, "and perhaps I have too." Arya felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had feared entering this house, feared the man before her, feared the unknown. But now, standing here, she felt something she had never known before: trust, courage, and a sense of belonging. I feel stronger," she admitted, "and safer somehow, not just because of you, but because I chose to act, to face the danger, and to stand here." Dante nodded, a rare smile ghosting his lips. "That is the beginning," he said, "not the end. The world beyond these walls is dangerous, full of shadows and choices yet to come. But you are ready for it. Together we can face whatever comes next." Arya's eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "Together," she agreed. The mansion seemed to breathe with them, the shadows softening, the air settling into calm after the storm. The package lay on the table, dormant now, its energy quiet but present, a reminder of the night's trials and triumphs. And in that quiet, Arya realized something profound. The mistake that had brought her here, the wrong house, the wrong delivery, had become the path to her transformation. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a fighter, a protector, and someone capable of courage beyond fear. Dante watched her, the barest trace of emotion flickering in his gaze. "The night has ended," he said, "but this is only the beginning of our story." Arya smiled faintly, feeling the truth of his words. The danger, the shadows, the challenges, they were not gone. But for the first time, she knew that she was not alone. She had someone to stand beside her, someone who had seen her strength, her courage, and her heart, and had chosen to trust her with his own. The fire flickered one last time before settling into a steady glow. Shadows danced gently across the walls, no longer threatening, but alive with the quiet energy of a night transformed. Arya took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the mansion, the city, and the possibilities that lay ahead. She had entered the wrong house, carrying bruises and fear. But she had emerged changed, stronger, and ready for whatever the world would demand. And as she glanced at Dante, she knew one undeniable truth. The night had not only tested her, it had bound them together in trust, courage, and something far deeper than either of them had anticipated. The city beyond waited in silence, but Arya did not fear it anymore. She had faced darkness, she had made her choice, and she had found her strength. And in the heart of the mansion, among shadows and firelight, a new story had begun, one of courage, redemption, and the unspoken bond between two souls who had found each other in the midst of chaos. The night had ended, but the journey was just beginning. And together, Arya and Dante stepped into the unknown, ready to face it as allies, as partners, and perhaps, in time, as something more.